Well, speaking of risk, we have been talking about risk management for quite a while now, and it's a topic that's gained a lot of traction really over the past few years. I mean, I remember, Greg Hutchins was telling us 5-6 years ago or more that this is going to be the next big thing.
And he was right.
And he was right. It is a huge thing now. And it's even more so now, I think, because the proposed, as we've just been talking about, the proposed ISO 9001 standard may be integrating aspects of risk into it. So it's important to delve into the topic some more. So with us via Skype today is one of our risk management experts, Tim Lozier of ETQ. Good morning, Tim.
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. So first of all, just to make sure we're all on the same page, when you're talking about risk management, as you will be here in just 30 seconds or so, what do you mean by risk management? Define it for us as you look at it.
Yeah, sure. Risk management is really a broad concept, and it encompasses many facets of the business. At its core, risk management is a process by which we identify hazards, threats, things that can impact the business. And once we have those threats and hazards identified, we want to attempt to quantify them. We want to measure them. So we look to tools like risk assessment and different types of risk tools to try and come up with a measurement, some sort of ranking on how we can quantify them. Once we've done that, we can then put in controls, preventive measures in place to ensure that we can mitigate whatever risks we have. And that's essentially the process. But once we've done that, we want to actually go back and put it into our existing operational processes, quality, safety, compliance, so that we're augmenting what we're doing today with a risk matrix or a risk methodology. And then we want to continue to evaluate over time the risks that we have. So once you've defined your risks and you put controls in place, it doesn't end there. You want to be able to go back and reevaluate over time, see if there's new threats, there's new hazards, see if things have changed, you change your business, has your risks changed? So really, risk management is this overreaching process that closes a loop on identifying potential systemic issues, and we incorporate them into our daily activities.
Well, I mean, in your article, you say that you're seeing risk management make its way into ISO quality management system standards as well. We talked about. Why is that happening, do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I think over the past few decades, we're starting to see a new way of looking at quality, compliance. If you look at businesses today in the economy, we're facing a high degree of complexity. Whether you're talking about the global market, you're talking about customer demand, supply chain, mergers, acquisitions, things are moving at a fast pace. And we have this complexity and this pace and this demand, but we're also required to be compliant. And so the question becomes is what's the acceptable level of compliance we're required to have? Is 100% compliance acceptable 100% of the time? The reality is it's not necessarily the case. So what you're looking for is what's that level of compliance that you want to achieve in a complex, fast-paced business. And risk is really becoming that benchmark to say, let's quantify what we have and let's take actions to get within that acceptable limit of compliance. Now, when you look at these standards, the ISO standards and other regulatory standards that are out there, they're really the benchmark for what companies are looking to strive towards. They're the framework. And so what you're starting to see now is that these architects of these frameworks are starting to realize that this complexity of business, this pace of business is driving this risk message. So you're going to start to see risk management concepts start to creep into these conversations and these frameworks over time. So I think it's a great step that the ISO is really taking that hard look at risk and really putting in some proactive framework methodologies within there.
Tim, your article again, which we ran this week, and all of you can read underneath the player page right down there. In your article, you also talk about how not everybody in an organization maybe speaks the language of quality or safety, for instance, but we all speak risk. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by speaking risk as an organization?
Well, when you look at a business as a whole, there's a lot of different processes. We all have different processes that we have for achieving compliance. So, safety has their own processes, quality has their own processes, but so does finance, so does IT, so does the supply chain. So when you look at all these things, you want to try and find a way that the top level corporate decision makers can interpret what's going on at these lower levels, these operational areas within the business, and make really good decisions, especially when we talk about complexity and speed. So what risk is able to do is to really level that playing field. So what you're able to do is, by building in risk, you're augmenting the process, you're using your existing processes, but you're putting on a level that allows decision makers to go in, see a universal concept of, okay, what are my top risks here? What are my top risks here? And take actions on them. Not only just actions on individual areas, but look at risks as a whole. So you may have quality issues or quality risks that could relate to safety, finance, supply chain. So what risk is able to do is really create that holistic view of what the compliance challenges are and make better decisions. And so risk is really powerful in that sense.
So does this mean that people are going to have to learn a whole new set of tools for risk management? I mean, that's going to be the question our viewers are going to be asking. It's like, okay, gosh, I'm having to learn to do all this stuff for ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. Is this going to cause work for those people who are already involved in other compliance activities at their work?
Well, in truth, a lot of companies are already doing some degree of risk management in their daily operations today. They just don't view it as such. So, when we do next week's webinar, we're going to talk about some of these common tools that are used in quality management today that can be used as risk tools within their processes. In many cases, it's not a giant leap to take what you have and just be able to quantify it in a risk standpoint. Now, that's not a blanket statement. I mean, there's plenty of organizations that have really involved risk-based strategies, and both flavors are good. But the reality is that risk management process is designed to augment or tack on to what you already have. But instead of using your adverse events, conducting your adverse events and correcting them, you're building a quantitative measure that assesses a risk level. And you're still able to do what you do, but these tools are designed to help you, achieve risk compliance without having to make a giant leap.
So, speaking of tools, then, this is probably a good lead-in for this next question: is what is the best way to prepare for upcoming risk management activities, or even compliance, even?
Well, there's several ways you can get started on this whole risk journey. The simplest way is really just to go out there and start surveying your operational areas. A lot of companies will go and they'll go survey managers, and they'll survey these different stakeholders within the different operational areas, looking for what are your top threats. And don't think in terms of risk. Just say, what are your top hazards? What are the top risks? What keeps you up? And by doing that, you're able to collect this data. And once you've collected that data, you can start to build a common theme for each of these. And we call those taxonomies of risk. And what that allows you to do is say, here are the categories where all our operational areas have said, these are where the risks are, these are where the hazards are. And by building this taxonomy, you can actually start to put them into buckets and start to quantify the different areas within risk. And what you're able to do is, now when you go through your processes, whether it's quality, safety, compliance, what have you, you're able to take those taxonomies of risk, quantify them using risk tools, and be able to make better decisions, and really tack on this risk management process to what you're doing today. And that's really the power. You want to be able to identify your threats, you want to quantify them within your existing operations, and then build a risk view that allows top management to actually see the entire picture from a macro level and make better decisions based on risk. And that's how people are going to be able to keep up with the complexity of business in today's new economy, and also make better decisions and stay compliant.
Okay. Well, Tim, we're going to hear a lot more about this on a webinar that's coming up
Tuesday.
Tuesday, that's
Tuesday
right.
the 22nd.
Maybe we can pop that slide.
Yeah, we have a slide right there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Tuesday the 22nd, there you can see it right there. It's 2 p.m. Eastern and 11 a.m. Pacific, and you can register for the webinar right on the player page, I believe, or right into Tim's article.
Actually, I believe the link on the below the player page will take you to the article. You can read more about what Tim was talking about, as well as some hints and tips there, but there's also a link at the top of the page there that will allow you to register for the webinar as well.
Check it out. Deep dive on that. Tim and Dirk are going to be hosting that on next Tuesday, so look out for that. Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Tim.
We'll see you. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Okay.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's a good webinar. You know, risk. Hey, we talked about it twice today on the show. I mean, it's not going away. I think people want to know about it, and I think it's good to know about.
And I think what Tim said at the very end there is really important. Is even if you aren't actively pursuing a risk management, compliance program or a standard risk management program in general, I think the process of going through, the exercise of going through, at least at this point, of identifying what your risks are,
Sure.
even just a list, so that when it comes to that point where it's time to start putting some sort of, your boss comes to you and says, hey, we got to start doing risk management, you've already got maybe a short list of, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here are what I think are the critical touch points for risk in our organization. I mean, it's important just to start thinking about it. It's important to be doing anyway, I think, in any part of the organization.
Absolutely.
So.
Understanding risk is always a good thing. Okay. Well, we have